So we get to Hebrews, which is a unique book of the Bible, and especially in the New Testament. Um, Hebrews is situation or situated, I should say, in this grouping that we call the epistles or the letters. And so one might assume, well, this is a letter also, and it sort of is. Uh, but it's more like a sermon, or it's more like this sort of theological treatise that's sent as a letter. It'd be like if um, I don't really write sermons word for word exactly, but if I wrote a sermon manuscript and then mailed it, and you said I got a letter, well, yes and no. But anyway, so by the second century, so we're talking 100 years or so after Hebrews was written, somewhere around 60 to 70, we think, AD. But by the second century, 100 years later, plus or minus, it's identified as a letter to Jewish Christians written by Paul. Now, today, scholars view that as widely view that as inaccurate, and in fact, even those in the early church viewed that as inaccurate too. Origen, Origen, a father of the church who was around in the third century, famously said that only God knows who wrote Hebrews, and it is not. First of all, it doesn't say it's written by Paul, and it doesn't sound like Paul. It doesn't look like Paul. The content is presented differently. If you just picked it out of a box of letters and you wouldn't say this is Pauline. It's just that it comes after so many letters which are attributed to Paul that we think, oh, this must be from Paul. But we don't know that. In fact, it's highly doubtful that it is. In any case, that means that the authorship and the sort of setting for to whom is the letter written and when and why, that has to be gleaned from the content because there's no identification there, as Paul often used. So Hebrews is, as you might imagine, likely written to a community of, or mostly of, Jewish Hebrew converts to Christianity. So people who were born Jewish and then became Christians. And these people have went over to Christianity, and now it seems like, based on the content of the letter, they're thinking about going back to Judaism. So all of Hebrews then is sort of based in this idea that Jesus is the fulfillment of um, the promises of Hebrew Scripture. That Christianity is not different from Judaism; it's an extension of Judaism. It is Judaism, I think the author would say, from that person's standpoint. Of course, that brings up some problems of anti-Semitism and things like that. You could read into it, but the point is that the author of Hebrews puts the emphasis on the new covenant with Jesus is better than the old covenant. The covenant has changed. It's not two different options. It's that the covenant has changed. It is now fulfilled differently by God. So, and I would say it's this is not an anti-Semitic kind of thing because Hebrews says that Christ's new covenant is for the Jews. It's not against the Jews. It is for the Jews. And so we find that the readers have faced persecution for Christ, and that and this is just an example that the author is trying to um, position the argument in such a way that it is familiar for people who grew up Jewish. So the author likens the persecution that they're experiencing on behalf of Christ to the Israelites journeying in the wilderness. So the church of Christ is sort of reminiscent of this wandering pilgrimage. Like, look, we're doing the same thing again, just a little bit differently. So again, all based in a Jewish understanding with a Christ-centered hermeneutic. And hermeneutic just means like it's a theological word, like the lenses we use to view something. So it's a Christ-centered lens, a Christ-centered hermeneutic. So really important, interesting book of the Bible, Hebrews.